Well, thank you for watching Morning Live. Now, although broad-based black economic empowerment has contributed to the significant growth of previously disadvantaged groups, government has admitted that the policy had been slow in achieving the transformation that it was intended to. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa made these remarks in Parliament last week, saying that government would not scrap the policy. However, according to the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Commission, the number of black business owners decreased from 33.5% to 27.8% between 2015 and 2017. So to discuss this further, we're joined by Dumat Qubule, who is the director of the Center for Economic Development and Transformation, as well as Masvita Maradzika, executive director of Siaka Capital Advisor, a Bbeee advisory firm. Thanks so much to both of you for coming through.
Thank you. So the first thing I want to say is that you cannot divorce the whole policy of Bbeee from the overall performance of our economy. Now, whichever way you slice the data over the past 25 years, we have disappointed as a country. If you look at from 1994 to 2018, in per capita terms, the economy has grown by only 30%. Now, if you look at today, we've got high levels of unemployment. We've got 10 million people who do not participate in the economy. The unemployment rate for black Africans is 42%. The unemployment rate for black African females is 46%. And the unemployment rate in the Eastern Cape is 48%. The poverty rate is very high in South Africa. In 2015, the last study that was done by Stats SA, the poverty rate for black Africans was a shocking 64%. And as you know, Sakina, we have the highest level of inequality in the world. We used to be, second or third, but now we've got the highest. So the main problem that we're having, just to cut the story short, is that our economy has done nothing over the past 10 years. In per capita terms, our economy has grown by 0.2% a year. So we are now in the worst post-apartheid economic crisis. The economy is in a desperate situation, and we cannot use normal economic policy tools. We are in a situation of countries recovering from a war, and you can't just use normal monetary, fiscal, industrial policies. You have to do extraordinary measures to get your economy growing again.
So then the question becomes, what then would work? You know, what sort of policy direction should we be taking if indeed this triple BEE has not delivered the intended results that was envisioned by government, Masvita?
Okay, thank you, Sakina. Look, to say that BEE has not worked and we should start again, you know, I think that would really be reinventing the wheel. If you look at the principle behind it, it's trying to improve economic empowerment in the hands of black people. We've started a report on trends and status, and this year is the second year where it's running, and you'll actually find that there's more compliance, government entities and the private sector, and you actually have more JSE listed entities. So for example, you have 161 JSE listed entities reporting versus 121 in the past. You have 1,061 generic entities or large entities versus 871 now reporting on BEE. You've got 27 organs of state that are reporting on BEE and compliance versus 4 in the previous year. So I think we can't throw the baby out with the water. You know, it's a policy that works. The nice thing about this is we've got past experience. Since the inception of BEE, we've had a lot of transactions, we've had a lot of policy implementation that has gone through. And where you see the changes coming through now is people have learned from these experiences to say, okay, this didn't work. For example, under ownership transactions, you have the BEE Commission who's come out to say, there's specific issues on SPV structures, on trust structures that we need to take into account to improve black ownership, right? And this is all coming from past experiences on past transactions and how they were structured before. Under skills development, there's various initiatives. Under enterprise and supply development, we also have we also bring in localization to improve black businesses and to develop your black SMEs. So the learnings of the past are allowing us to further refine the BEE codes. So I believe this is, as the President said, it is something that is moving, albeit at a slow pace, but we are making significant
So
strides.
what are those? So talking about this policy, Mazwika, you feel that, you know, we need to tweak what's not working. Duma, you say it's time for a new direction.
It's completely broken. Let me give you an example. Mazwika said that 161 listed companies complied. They didn't comply, they reported. And there are 400 listed companies, so that's a very low level of compliance. The majority of JSE listed companies are not complying. Now, the second thing is how government has messed up its own policy. They allowed this thing called the once empowered, always empowered policy to apply in the mines and the banks. Now, the mines and the banks accounted for 60% of the the value that has been created for black shareholders. So basically, there will be no more transactions in the banking and the mining sector. So that you can say that the policy is almost over, it's on its last legs. So there's very little transactions that are happening on the JSE over the past 10 years. It's here and there we're seeing transactions. So I'm just saying that the codes of good practice that Mazwika is talking about, they are not working. And let me just give an example. I've worked in companies where they have a level 2 or 3 BE score. And you can't see a black person in the canteen. And what I'm trying to say is that there's no relation between what a company score is for ownership or for the B codes and the level of transformation in the company. For example, companies are saying that they have 30% black ownership. Those figures are completely bogus figures because there's no...
Why? Is it because of fronting? What are some of the reasons for that?
So the commission says that 30% is black ownership. But the fact is the black ownership is less than 3% of the JSE. So you'll see a company, let me just give you a random example. Pick n Pay has got a score of 16% black ownership. They've never done a BE transaction. So I'm trying to say, so the fact that companies have found ways to game the system, I think it's time to start again. So every single company has found a way to game the system, and that is what I think it's just not working at all. Yeah.
Mazwika?
Well, okay, look, you know, there's certain truths, obviously, to what Duma has mentioned. However, if you look at the introduction of the BE Commission, which is almost 2 years back, they are putting in the time and the work in terms of looking at these structures. And remember, BE is not only just ownership. Remember, you've got your management control, you've got your skills development, you've got your enterprise supply development, and you've got your SED. And you'll find that, as he said, it's not just about the scores, but about the tangible benefit. If you look at SED, most companies, including JSE listed and your other generic entities that are not listed, are meeting their targets. What does that mean? It means that there is a tangible benefit going through to SED beneficiaries. If you look at your enterprise and supply development, while the numbers of SMEs might be declining, right, you still have larger entities that are growing to become generic entities. So you don't have your SMEs that are just staying at SME level, but they're also growing. You know, we see this in the line of work that we do, so we're able to see the tangible change that is actually occurring. And for example, a couple of years ago, Siaka was asked to do a report on preferential procurement, and we found that our numbers moved from 9% to about 20% in terms of, you know, SMEs that increased as a result
you see,
of that.
this is the problem for me, because depending on who you speak to, you get a different set of numbers that are being peddled. So when we are told that almost 80% of all South African small businesses fail within the first 3 years, you know, how is BEE helping in this regard to empower these small businesses, which we are told are the lifeblood and what will spur on this economy?
Okay, first, let me talk about corporate social investment. The targets were set too low. The companies were already complying when the targets were set. So we can't celebrate the fact that companies are spending X on social. Now, talking about small business, if you look at the value chains of the large companies, very few of them actually procure from black-owned businesses. And if you look at the banks, there's very little lending to black-owned businesses. And if you look at the development finance institutions, again, there's very little lending to small businesses. So I think the small businesses are the forgotten people in this whole BEE thing. And I think it's actually scandalous, because I was doing some research on the banks, and the average bank spends about 2 billion rands on loans to black businesses. That is a shockingly low number. The National Empowerment Fund has closed. The Small Enterprise SIFA spends about R1 billion a year. So that is all that we're getting, let's say 10 billion
That
rands
is
to all the
shocking.
black businesses in the whole country. So, and then the large companies are not procuring from black-owned businesses because the previous version of the codes made it possible to achieve most of your target without procuring a cent from a black-owned company.
We're out of time. 15 seconds. What needs to be done?
Okay, what needs to be done? Look, a lot of changes, and I think speaking to what we're talking about with SMEs, it's not only BEE policy that's making SMEs fail, it's also access to finance. What can we do? We can improve SME training, SME development, and provide more incentives. Government entities can pay SMEs on time to improve your enterprise supply development because they don't survive because they're not getting paid.
Duma?
Yes, I agree with all of that, yeah. Okay, yeah.
I tell you what, there's much more to be discussed here, but you know, you make up your mind. Do you think that the policy is viable, or is it time that we looked into it and found something else that could be more effective? Thank you so much to Duma Qubule, the Director of the Center for Economic Development and Transformation, as well as Masvita Maradzika, Executive Director of Ziaka Capital Advisor, reflecting on BEE policy. Let's take a break.